We are live, everyone.
Hi, my name is Elise Hartman, and welcome to the fourth installment in our series on learning for collective action in dyslexia. So, this is an evidence based and culturally sustaining practices to support children with dyslexia. And we are going to have some wonderful conversation today with some beautiful discussants that have lots of information for us. First, we'd like to start by thanking those who have really been supporting us with this series and who have been making it possible. The Skillman Foundation and Teach for America Detroit, along with Teach for America Detroit Michigan Education Policy Fellowship. Again, this is the fourth in our series. We have one more coming up that we will be sending some information out about soon. And again, this area of conversation is about evidence based and culturally sustaining practices to support children with dyslexia. So, welcome to the 313 Reads series. Learning for Collective Action series, our overview is to provide accessible learning opportunities for community members on dyslexia. We're also increasing knowledge of state level dyslexia policy and offering avenues of civic engagement. And we are providing professional learning opportunities for evidence based practices in working with students with dyslexia. Again, my name is Elise Hartman, and I am the Director of Collective Learning and Resources here at 313 Reads. And I am so excited to be joined by Kristin Dwyer, by Lohren Carter-Nzoma, and by Lareea Jester. Remember to register for our giveaway. So we are raffling off a book today. And if you go to tinyurl.com/313 dyslexia 4, again, it's tinyurl.com 313 dyslexia 4, register to win for this book or win this book. And we're going to give it away a little bit later today. Let's introduce our panelist to all of you. Lohren Carter-Nzoma is the Assistant Superintendent, and she is from our Detroit Public School Community District. And Lohren, will you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Hello, everyone. Lohren Carter-Nzoma here. I have been with Detroit Public Schools Community District this is my 5th year now. Prior to this, I was Assistant Director of Special Education in Ann Arbor Public Schools. I've done other work around supporting exceptional learners and staff that support those learners as well around Michigan. I am an active member of the Michigan Association of Administrators of Special Education, as well as the Council of Administrators of Special Education. And I am here to serve. That's always the standpoint I am activated from. Love doing the work that I'm doing here as a resident. I live here in the city. My children attend school here in the public school system. And so this work is personal for me. So I think that's the avenue that I like to stand from. And I am here to activate the resources and supports as the public school entity.
Thank you, Lohren. We're so happy that you're here. Kristin, will you introduce yourself to us?
Absolutely. So my name is Kristin Dwyer, and I am a teacher, a tutor, a Montessori. I started in Montessori. I'm a state certified teacher. I have a wide background that I pull from in the work that I do, in addition to Orton Gillingham, with students and teachers and parents. And through the years, my mother also shares the same background, that we spent decades having conversations about how to move children up the ladder of reading and what resources were really effective and worked well, and decided to launch a program to be able to train more people in some of the tools that we had found that really got success across instructional settings, across ages, and created the Brain Friendly Reading Program. And there was such a great interest in that, and I wanted to make it as barrier-free and accessible as possible. So I created a nonprofit called We Shall Read, and We Shall Read is able to bring this work into schools and provide training and in-classroom coaching for teachers. And we've just had an explosion of success of being able to work with teachers both online and in person and doing professional development in the last year or so. So we're Michigan focused, but we train through Zoom all over the world, really, and do that in classroom personalized coaching in organizations around Michigan, because our focus is being able to serve in the communities where we live. So I work with a fabulous team of women who have been a great guide and support, and was actually able to attend a lecture that Lohren did at the Michigan Reading Association. So I'm excited to be here with you today talking about dyslexia and how we can help those children who, it's a pretty significant population, how we can help them to be as successful as they can be as well.
Thank you, and we're so excited that you're here. And Lareea, could you please introduce yourself to us?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lareea Jester. I am the Literacy Director for Beyond Basics, which is a nonprofit that offers tutoring to students in the Metro Detroit area. And we have partnerships with school districts as well as schools in the Archdiocese of Detroit. We offer one-on-one tutoring services using a multi-sensory phonics-based curriculum. And I manage the implementation of the tutoring that takes place across all of those locations. I've been with Beyond Basics since 2015, so I'm going into my 8th school year. I've worked with the organization at this point in various capacities, but I'm excited to be in this role of the director as we continue to bridge that gap and take the steps that's needed as we partner with various organizations to close the literacy gap, which we know is very prevalent, but we have a solution to close it. And so just excited to be able to participate in this conversation so that we can all support each other in this work. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so glad that all three of you are joining us today. And let's go ahead and get into our first area of discussion, policy level interaction with supports.
So I think, so this is Lohren Carter-Nzoma. I just want to jump in here. First, I want to say Michigan does not currently have approved legislation around dyslexia specifically. So I think that's one area to start in, whereas many other states do. And the way that the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education defines or serves students who may have dyslexia is really under the area of a specific learning disability. So for those that are parents or advocates for students in the school system, we follow those Michigan administrative rules, which you'll hear people call MARS, right? And so we're not going to see a lot of vocabulary that actively calls out dyslexia. So right now, there are House Bills 5934 through 37 that are proposed at this point. And so you need to really dig in and get involved in this. This panel will help do that around making sure that your representatives are pushing this work forward, because it is going to hold accountable districts and public school entities, because I'm including public school academies or charters, and that there's a way to screen for those students, actively screening for dyslexia specifically, making sure that we have some strong professional development that calls out the unique characteristics for students with dyslexia. And so I think one of the main things here for me as an educator is that once there's legislation in place, then there's funding that typically follows that. And so that's why this is super important. It's not that, from my perspective as an educator, that we don't want to specifically dig into finding those characteristics of dyslexia for students and supporting from that framework, but that there are challenges when you want to dig in with assessment tools, funding those assessment tools, funding the training that goes with that. Those are all real life challenges. If you're not aware, we also have a challenge just in special ed finance in general, where the state of Michigan does not fully fund special education. So there's these gaps that exist in terms of digging further into what we're doing around identifying those specific characteristics for dyslexia. So I just want to call that out on this particular slide, but then I'll go a little deeper. When you are a family who's actively trying to support a student with these needs, if you have a clinical diagnosis, then you need to know that that's separate from an educational eligibility. So we get a lot of doctors or clinical therapists sending parents into schools, and they'll write on a script pad, child requires an IEP. I don't think that does any good to families or for the public school and their relationship with those families, because they believe this medical professional is saying, I need an IEP. And then they come into the school saying, look, my doctor or my therapist said I need an IEP. So I think one of the first things we can do to support families is help them understand there's two separate settings. One is a clinical setting, which is where the therapists and the medical professionals are. And then the educational setting, which is bound by what I mentioned before, which is the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education. That gives very specific criteria for how you define someone as having a learning disability versus just pinpointing on dyslexia per se. So that is a really important understanding to help support families and students. And so when you come in with that information, it's all very important information. It helps the child study team or the multi-tiered systems of supports team in the building develop an appropriate plan for your student. And that plan may say, yes, this information coupled with our own assessments may determine a child is eligible under Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education as having a specific learning disability. Or it could say, yes, we understand clinically you have been diagnosed with a diagnosis of dyslexia, but it still does not meet the criteria for eligibility in the school system. And so then there's this space we meet in to develop a plan. That could be under Section 504, under civil rights, or if, again, they qualify, then individualized education plan or IEP is under Individuals with Disability Education Act, then subsequently Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education. So I think understanding the difference there, understanding how students may show up in a public school entity as a specific learning disability, you then need the language to go in and ask the right questions. And one of those questions is, I understand there's a specific learning disability. Can you explain the qualifying criteria? That's the next question, right? So if they are eligible, and then it breaks it down, which, there's a continuum of learning disabilities. So it could be in the area of math, it could be in the area of writing, or it could be in reading. So that's a follow-up question. And so I think if you have those starting points for families going into support, that understanding helps a lot and drives the conversation in a different way.
Thank you, Lohren. I see that Nancy has joined us, Nancy Brown from Bookshare. Nancy, would you like to take a minute and introduce yourself to our viewers? You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, I am Nancy Brown. I am the Detroit Outreach Coordinator for Bookshare, and I'm happy to be here today to share information about how Bookshare helps students with dyslexia. I look forward to talking a little further on. Thank you.
Thank you. We're happy you were able to join us. Kristin and Lareea, and actually Nancy as well, if you guys could share a little bit more about family advocacy and support with us, that would be wonderful.
Sure. So I think the first question is, what evidence-based learning strategies support students with dyslexia? And the really good news is that what children need who are dyslexic is actually matches what all children need. They just need more repetition of it. Mm-hmm. So the kinds of instructional strategies that we can use with dyslexics, we actually can use with all the children tier 1. And I believe Detroit Public Schools has an evidence-based instructional strategy program tier 1 for their K-2 classrooms. So that's the good news. And when we think about what it is that the kids need in order to be able to read or decode words, there's two really specific things that become important. And one of them that we see, there's many things that you could look at that children are struggling with who are dyslexic, but there's two that are really common that we can address. And one is the sound symbol connection. So that the students who are dyslexic, they've often missed being able to pick up the patterns in our language and know that things like OA says what? It says O. That A says ah in between two consonants. That they haven't had enough repetition with those patterns to be able to pick those up. So we can directly and explicitly teach them all of those sound symbol connections. And it sounds really basic, and it is, because it's a foundational skill. And the other one that oftentimes is missed with kiddos who are dyslexic is this phonemic awareness, which just means that they can hear the sounds in the language. So when a child hears the word cat, can they break it apart into its individual sounds? K, a, t. And that ability to segment words into their sounds gets translated into multisyllable words. So a child can take a three-syllable word and break that word into its syllables, and then break the syllables into the sounds. And it can do that the child can learn how to do that for spelling. And then we can teach them strategies for how to read multisyllable words too, one syllable at a time. So there's really clear strategies that are widely accepted, that are backed up by decades of research, a convergence of research across the world, really both in educational communities and through neuroscientists that help to develop those neural pathways in the brain between the parts of the brain that have to talk to each other for reading to happen. And when the children have those sound symbol connections, and they have the ability to hear the sounds in words, then we can engage in word study with them, which just means looking at groups of words that all share a common skill. And it really is that straightforward. And those strategies are ones that we can put in parents' hands. We can put them in the hands of teachers, teaching tier 1, small group, special education teachers, any instructional setting. And the reason that they cross instructional settings is because the brain learns how to read in one way, in this same way in every human brain. And what children need who are in that dyslexia range, that bottom section of our children who are learning how to read, who need the most support, is really what they need is more repetition with this work. That we know that for those children, it can take up to 200 repetitions for them to move that work into long-term memory. Whereas for a child who looks like they're, read and taught themselves on their own, they might only need 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 repetitions of the same work. So those instructional strategies are ones that the research across the world supports, and that really make a difference in the child's ability to begin to engage in self-teaching. And that provides them with the opportunity to be able to grow their sense of competency. And out of their competency, they begin to become confident and hopeful that, in fact, they can learn how to do this thing that for them has been challenging and difficult, and that they may have given up on. So those are a few of the pieces. Lareea, did you want to jump in here?
Yes, Kristin, I loved what you said about these strategies being transferable across all learners. We know that these strategies are applicable no matter what learner you have, but specifically for those with dyslexia. And I just wanted to add that one of the other evidence-based strategies is being able to work with students in either one-on-one or small group settings is another evidence-based strategy that has shown to be successful when, again, not dealing with just dyslexic students, but students across all learning styles. And additionally, multisensory curriculum. or strategies as you're going through all of those strategies that you just spoke of, the phonemic awareness and being able to decode, students being able to put their hands on tiles or textures or other sources to help them hear and say, what the different words are, is definitely an evidence-based strategy that, again, transfers across various learners, but specifically those dyslexic learners as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think you hit on such a good point about that multi-sensory, multimodal, that we let children touch and feel and move things around. If it's cards and they're matching two parts of the word, or the tiles that Beyond Basics uses to help the children be able to build words with those tiles, whether they're in high school or whether they're 6 years old, it doesn't matter, because for each child, no matter where they're at, or each learner, wherever they're at, they're doing that work to build those neural pathways in the brain. And the other piece I think it's important to remember, to layer onto what you said, is the cumulative piece of this work. So both Beyond Basics and We Shall Read uses structured literacy approaches, and we both are saying that the work is best done when it's cumulative, rather than what sometimes is referred to as a scattershot approach. Cumulative just means that we start at a place where there's a foundation of skills, and then we build on those skills. And we ask the children to only use, I know I'm talking with my hands on a tiny screen, that we only ask the children to read and decode and work with the spelling with the skills that they've been previously taught, because that is what allows them to apply what it is that we've taught them, and to not ask them to use skills that we haven't taught, right? That kind of makes sense. So the cumulative nature of our programs too really lends to the success that we have tier 1, 2, and 3, I think.
Absolutely. I think that's a critical piece, especially in that confidence building piece, because I think you made a comment previously about, the student being able to, build that confidence to access those skills that they didn't even know that they had, or even felt like they could ever have. And so as we're, teaching them these strategies and they're able to apply it, no matter what word they come across, they are building that confidence. And it just, gives them that extra motivation to try words that they may not have even thought that they would be able to try in the past, just by giving them this one tool of showing them how to break down a 3-syllable word into 1 syllable at a time. And, it makes a world of a difference in how they're able to proceed as they expand the levels of readings that they have to encounter as they continue through their education.
And Kristin, I like how you said that these are strategies that we can put into the hands of families and teachers. And Lohren said that we're providing them with language that can be used. So these are all tools that can be added to the toolbox. And so I like that you're actually providing these actionable steps and items.
I wanted to add, if I could, so what the two ladies, Ms. Jester, Ms. Dwyer, were speaking on is super important. I can say that I know we had 500 students in DPSCD who were taking advantage of Beyond Basics, and we have been tracking that data, so I'm eager to follow up and progress monitor that and see where we are. So we are actively utilizing that in the district, but I also just wanted to come back to, yes, the statement in the chat was that DPSCD has taken on Orton Gillingham, and so that instruction and professional development has been occurring over the last 2.5 years here in DPSCD. So that's for our, what we'll call tier 2 and tier 3 students, those students who need a little more support than what they're getting in the classroom. They've tried small groups in classroom. Now they may be pulled out for a small group with what we call academic interventionists. And they've gone through a 5-day training, received the materials, and have modeling and coaching support that follows them in the buildings. And so this is in every single building in DPSCD. And so I do know some parents will say, hey, my child needs the support in reading, and they will not be aware that the Orton Gillingham is happening. And so we want to make sure that, parents have that language. You can go in and say, can you tell me what tiered interventions my students are receiving, and then ask for progress reporting on that. And so just if you are not clear on that, so that's a way to go in, get connected with what's happening, and follow up with the academic interventionist who's providing that support via the principal. So hope that language is helpful to parents. Also, through our Parent Academy workshops with our FACE department, which is Family and Community Engagement, and I'll drop the link in the chat, we offer parent workshops on some of those interventions in the buildings. So I think that's a great connection for families.
Nancy, can you share a little bit about the free supports that you offer family and families and children with dyslexia? You're muted.
Okay, so I'm really excited to be here to talk about Bookshare, which is a very powerful tool that is provided by free for students with dyslexia. It's paid for by the U.S. Department of Ed, Office of Special Ed Programs. And this service is available to students who have reading disabilities. It allows students to read in a way that works best for them. So this e-library houses more than 1 million books. We're talking about bestsellers for children. We're talking about books that are in series. So we're talking about being able to customize the reading experience for students. And by doing that, students can customize the font style, so they can change the type of font, the font size, they can highlight the background or the text. They can change the word and line spacing. Bookshare provides a wonderful text-to-speech, audio, and human narrative so that students actually hear. So it's supporting and reinforcing the decoding and the comprehension. And what it does is it removes the barriers, the trials of students trying to decode words. It allows them to listen to the text on the screen, and that way they have better fluency, better comprehension of what they are reading. So it really allows families to help their children become independent. There are 2 types of memberships. We have organizational memberships, and Detroit DPSCD has an organizational membership. It's growing daily, and we're so happy. We've been with Detroit for many years now, and we're expanding the use of Bookshare in Detroit. But we also have individual memberships for families so that the parents can actually download books for their children. If a child is older than 18, a young adult, then they can download their own books. Something really special, their students who graduate from the school district and go on to college can still receive books for free. So those textbooks that they pay for, those books are available as well through Bookshare. So we're really excited that we're coming out with what we call our Bookshare Reader Suite, and that should be coming out in the fall. That will allow students to have mobile access, so they can use Bookshare on their smartphones, their tablets. So Bookshare can be on the computers. Bookshare can be utilized on almost any device. We're talking about Braille readers. The materials are available in large print as well. The new web reader is available on iOS, Mac, and Android. And again, it allows students to customize the settings just for them. So when they leave a book and come back to it, it will remember the settings that they put in place and where they left off reading. So, and one really wonderful feature that I'm excited about, we're now going to be synced with Alexa as a smart speaker, and that's going to be very impactful, especially for students who have trouble maybe turning a page, or who have visual impairments, or just expediting the reading process. So then you can just access Alexa and open your books that way and download your books. And again, you get books, magazines, newspaper articles, everything with very high quality text-to-speech voice. And we know that that is significant for our students who have dyslexia. So we're really excited about Bookshare. We also, with our text-to-speech, we've improved the reading of equations. So sometimes with text-to-speech, it doesn't read equations in the math books very well. We've improved on that. So we're really excited about having that out as well. And that's our Math ML. So again, you can go to our website. It's bookshare.org, and you'll see all of the wonderful resources that we have in our repository. And they will show you, walk you through how you can set up an account, an individual account. If you want your student to have an account through the school district, then Dr. Caesar, you can go to your teacher will talk to Dr. Caesar, and we can set your child up with a Bookshare account. It's a very powerful tool. We're really excited to be able to offer it to our families.
Sounds like a wonderful resource.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I wanted to chime in. Thank you for sharing our partnership, Ms. Brown. I did want to just kind of highlight that Bookshare could be considered what we call assistive technology for those students who are identified as having an IEP in the school system. So just to, again, I'm coming back with the appropriate language to help parents have the conversation. But it's a part of an evaluation when you talk about a child who has an IEP. So it's not that, it's available, but there is a process to determine if that's an appropriate tool, or if there may be another tool that may be more appropriate, depending on what I shared were those qualifying characteristics. Remember, you could have a specific learning disability, but then the qualifying characteristics for that specific learning disability are where we need to dig in and determine the most appropriate assessment technology. So that is one avenue of support, but if you get into public school, and that language is really important to share with the team. I would like to look at assistive technology or evaluate my child for appropriate assistive technology.
And
Nancy,
since I do a lot of work with parents, oh, sorry to jump in if I talked over somebody. If I do a lot of work with parents, and one of the things that I tell parents is you can take action for finding ways for your children to be able to listen to books, that children who don't read books on their own, whether they can't or they choose not to, either way, that listening to literature, books, it doesn't matter what it is really, is really important to support the reading process, no matter where the child is in the reading process. So I love hearing about Bookshare. And if the school wasn't going to offer it because they deemed it not to be a support, or if you're just teaching in an organization that isn't connected with Bookshare, that providing audio resources for children is really valuable because it addresses two evidence-based strategies. And if I can jump back to that real quick to say vocabulary and background knowledge are hugely important in being able to achieve that magic comprehension that we're looking for, that children can learn how to decode, but if they don't know what the words mean, or they don't understand the context of what it is they're reading, they can't have comprehension. It's impossible. So vocabulary and background knowledge can come not from just direct and explicit instruction in school settings, but through literature, particularly nonfiction literature, but even fiction will expose the children to tons of vocabulary that they might not have access to in their daily spoken language. So that listening to stories is incredibly important for all the reasons that Nancy addressed, and also for those other two that we think about as professional educators in the reading field.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Nancy, just to clarify, you said that there are a couple of different memberships, but is it free to specific students as well?
It's free to all students who qualify. Bookshare is free to all students who qualify, whether that's K-12 as well as students who are in college. So absolutely, yes. And there are two types of memberships. We have a partnership, as Lohren said, we have a partnership with a DPSCD for our organizational memberships. There are also individual memberships for families if they would like to have that for their child, where they download books as well. And again, if a student is over the age of 18, they can download their own books.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. I'd like to open up these next two questions to all of you to respond to. Yeah, if anyone would like to begin, that would be great. Does anyone have any thoughts on what advocacy organizations exist to support students and their families, and what supports do they provide, and what tutoring or other support resources exist for students and their families, and what support do they provide? I know we've touched on these, but if there are any additions to that, that would be great.
Well, I can jump in and just share that in whatever school district you're in, whether it's a charter or otherwise, there are parent advisory committees, or there are supposed to be parent advisory committees, and they just refer to them as PACs. Those PACs are really important to get parents involved. And the criteria is that you have a child with an IEP. Now, that doesn't mean you can't reach out to those parent advisory committees for support, because again, in Detroit, I can say we have our FACE, or Family and Community Engagement Department, where we're tightly connected with our parent advisory committee. And so we are pulling in, what do you want? What do you want to see? What are some of the supports you need? Would you like to present as a parent to other parents? And I think that's really important as well, is empowering our families to be their own agents, right? So we can advocate or support advocacy organizations, which means that that person has the information and they know the avenues, but we really want to shift more to empowering and creating agents out of our families. And so when that's the case, we shift the parents to this committee, where they actually are telling us what they need, telling us, is our plan for exceptional students working? Hold us accountable to that. And so it's really great when parents can get that leg in to say, look, I'm a partner, and we need to have this conversation about what's required, or what I'm hearing from other parents is a need. But also, I'll leave you with, parents, please do be empowered to know that you have gone through things that you can also impart expertise on the school district and other parents about.
Thank you, Lohren.
I'd jump in and say that I see Elise on here in the chats, and she's a tremendous advocate in dyslexia in the state for moving those dyslexia bills forward. So please feel free to drop into the chat, Elise, some links that you think that people would benefit from. And that a couple of resources for parents too is one that's really easily accessible is homeschooling with dyslexia. I think it's homeschoolingwithdyslexia.com. And they have a lot of really straightforward resources for parents to be able to use themselves in their home situation. There's also dyslexia help at UMich, and I'll drop that in too, but it's a dyslexia help page that's focused just on Michigan for parents and educators as well. And then I know the Children's Dyslexia Center that's actually just outside of Detroit in Dearborn offers free Orton Gillingham tutoring 2 years worth for children who have qualified for services. So they have a pretty extensive waiting list, but that's another place that I've run into people in schools who have used their resources to be able to get individualized tutoring at no cost for their students. And I know our organization, We Shall Read, has free training programs. We have a really low cost training program that parents go through. We offer full scholarships for that training program. We intend to be barrier free with that. So for people who are interested in learning how to help their child at home, we coach people how to do that. We train them, and then we provide weekly group coaching with experienced trainers and tutors to be able to come to those coaching calls and ask questions like, I did this and I did that, and this is what my child did. What should I do differently? And be able to go into a breakout room and have those private conversations and get that individualized coaching at no cost, really forever, as long as your child needs that. So those are the couple that pop into my head for resources for people.
I can just hop in and speak to the work that Beyond Basics is doing. As Ms. Nzoma said earlier, we are in a number of Detroit public schools. We hope to, continue the partnership and go into additional schools within the district, because we're there tutoring students daily in those one-on-one settings. We are there during the school day, so that's another unique piece. It's not an after-school program. It's during the school day that we are working with students one-on-one using the research-based Orton Gillingham curriculum. We have trained tutors who are working with the students individually based on their diagnostic assessment. And that's a key piece as well, because it helps to facilitate that mentoring piece that's important as you're building relationships with students to, as we spoke on earlier, keep them motivated and engaged in this process as they're learning those specific tools and strategies as they're learning, how to read, using this multisensory curriculum. So that's an additional resource that is being offered in, again, several of the schools within the Detroit Public School District. And as I stated earlier, some other schools around Metro Detroit.
Thank you. You all have provided us with a wealth of information. This is really exciting. And we do have some other links that we will provide to all that have registered, and we'll get this information up on our website. And I'm hoping that we can get your information, the information that you've provided us today, up on the website as quickly as possible as well. So thank you so much for providing us with language and strategies and all of these different tools that can be added to our toolbox. Well, we are getting ready for our book giveaway, and just want to remind everyone to please go and sign up and register to win the Dyslexia Empowerment Plan. So we'll be giving that away at the end of our conversation. Want to ask the group here, and also ask those of you who are watching, you can drop it into the chat. What is one takeaway you would like for all of our participants to have after this session? And for those of you who are watching, we'd like to also know, what is your one takeaway from this session?
I'll go first. As I'm sitting here listening to everybody talk about it from the school perspective and the excellent work and supports and systems that have been put in place to really address the needs of the dyslexic children, thinking about what's happening with all of the people who are advocating at the state level to pass legislation so that there are laws on the books, and hopefully funding would follow that and be fully funded, ideally. And thinking about the work that nonprofits are doing, like We Shall Read and Beyond Basics, and what Bookshare is up to, that what I'm struck by is that this issue of reading really requires a collaborative approach. and us all working together through our individual lenses to really address the pieces that are in front of us. And I'm feel empowered. I don't think that's the right word, but I feel supported by knowing that there's so many organizations who are looking at addressing this need that our children have, and that we're all working together in our different and various ways, and that we can collaborate to really be able to support the children. And that's encouraging, because it's hard work that we're doing, not only on our end, but also the parents who are working with the children, and the teachers and the schools, and everybody is so passionate and dedicated to seeing that the children can be successful.
Yeah, Kristin, I appreciate that stance. And I would echo what you just said, that it takes all of us. But, my perspective as a parent and an educator is that, it's all about empowering. We never want to hold all the information. For one, you can never have the answers to other people's issues. And so it's about sharing what you have and actually creating that space, scooting over and making room for other ideas. And so I think I have that in the forefront of what I do, and I empower my leadership to also scoot over, make room, and impart information for those that need to make decisions for what's best for their family. So while I do take the perspective here, obviously, in my profession as an educator, I also come back and have the discussion as a parent. And so you always do what's right. That may or may not be within the structural confines of a school entity, but you can take what is relevant for you and come back, get the information, and share and make the proper decision for you and your family. So for me, it's about empowering individuals and creating a space where they feel like they have a partner and a resource. So if nothing else, we expect to hear from some of the participants today. You can reach me directly on the website. I have shared the Parent Advisory Committee website. And so if you look for exceptional student education, you will find my information there. Happy to partner with any of the participants today.
Nancy, you're muted.
The one takeaway that I would like to leave parents and participants with today is that reading should be an enjoyable experience. Children should love to read. They should be independent in their reading. They should gain new knowledge with their reading. And Bookshare does allow students that independence, and it allows them to customize the reading experience. And so I'm just inviting everyone to go to bookshare.org and take a look at this wonderful, powerful resource.
I just wanted to share the takeaway that I wanted participants to walk away with today, and that is that all students are capable if they have the resources that they need. And so through having these discussions and sharing the various resources that are out there, we are assisting with making sure that our students are able to be prepared participants in not only in their educational journey, but ultimately in society as they become adults and enter that. And so I just want to just drive home the point that we know that literacy, is a crisis, and we just have to continue to work together to, as someone else stated, get those resources out there so that our students and families can access them.
Thank you. I've enjoyed hearing your takeaways and also just reading what the viewers have been dropping into the chat about their takeaways as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we've also have our resource list here for you. And I noticed we've been able to drop some additional information in as you all have been talking. So again, this list will be on our website, and we can get it out to our participants as well. And now it's time to move into our book raffle before our Q&A. So as we're getting ready to raffle off the books, why don't all of you queue up your questions for us? And let's see here. We're going to move over here and we will see who is going to win this book. And then we will come back and do a quick Q&A. So can everyone see my screen here? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, let's see here. Who is going to be our winner? It is Marwa. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You have won the book. So congratulations. We will make sure that we get that out to you. And we're going to go ahead and move into a Q&A. So if any of our audience members have some questions, this is the time to ask and have your questions answered. Can you see the question there? What do you say to programs that center predictable pattern text like, I see a big giraffe, I see a big ostrich, I see a big hippopotamus, instead of decodable text?
So I can address that one. So those are typical readers that children use in balanced literacy curriculums, where we're asking the children to learn how to read by reading a pattern over and over again. And that works okay for about 40% of the children, because through that repetitive reading, they internalize the words that are in those sentences. I see ya, I see ya, I see ya, or right? So what the tricky piece is that it's not actually teaching children to decode, all the children to decode. It's teaching children to memorize words. Mm-hmm. And that's also asking children to look at pictures in the book in order to figure out how to read giraffe, because they don't know how to read giraffe, fire truck. They're not reading those words. They're looking at the picture, and that's cueing them, because they are able to go, that's a giraffe. And I figured out that whatever's in the picture must be whatever this really long word is that I don't know how to read. So that's not really a reading strategy, looking at pictures and then making a guess about what the word is. That is a strategy that's been used and has really been shown with the science to show that it doesn't help to all the children. And we're particularly talking about dyslexic children. It's actually really damaging for dyslexic children, because it's teaching them to use strategies to make guesses about words instead of understanding the sound symbol connections and then decoding. So it would be my recommendation to not use books like that, and to look for books that are called decodable readers to use with particularly new young readers.
Got another question there. Can you see the question, or is it helpful if I read it?
Oh, let's see.
Looks like a Bookshare question.
It does look like a book question.
Oh, this will remove.
So it says, so this will remove the need for third-party applications to use Bookshare on iPads or iPhones.
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question. So to use, yes, you don't have to have a third-party don't have to have third-party permission to use Bookshare on iPads or iPhones. It's an app that you can open and use as you would any other app. Or you can go to Bookshare and open the web reader and use that without any third-party permissions. Yes. Did that answer the question, I hope?
So the next question, I guess I'm jumping in on the next question. Nancy, excuse me, if the other person needs follow-up. And the next question says, do you have strategies for students with dysgraphia? And what dysgraphia is falls under a spectrum of difficulties that involve handwriting. So that's for a child who's been diagnosed with having difficulty with actually forming the shapes of the letters. And there's a lot to know about dysgraphia, but one of the key pieces for older children who are dysgraphic is that trying to remediate their print is very difficult. But teaching them how to write in cursive is a way to get around that. So with an older child, when you teach them to write using cursive, the issues that they're having that are related to dysgraphia really disappear for a lot of different reasons. So some children are really open to that, particularly girls are really open to learning how to write in cursive. And some children are not. If you have a young child who's struggling with dysgraphia or just handwriting, some of the very straightforward strategies that people can use in classrooms or even at home are chalkboards. And I know we don't really have chalkboards anymore. So finding a chalkboard or painting a piece of the wall with chalkboard chalk and having the child stand with a thick piece of chalkboard helps to build the muscle strength in the finger that's required for holding a pen or a pencil, gripping that chalk and then having to move that chalk to make the shapes on the chalkboard. So what I teach and what seems to work very well with the children that I have with dysgraphia is to make large gross motor with your whole arm to make very large shapes when we're writing the letters, that we're making the shape really big while we're standing at a chalkboard. You can use a write-on wipe-off board if that's what you have. It's the large gross motor movement that helps to build that pattern in the brain of circle and down, circle and down, circle and down, and cueing the direction that the child needs to go and letting them practice circle and down, circle and down, circle and down, and then attaching the sound to it. So they might do it. For instance, a little girl I taught, I had a big wall board and she put like 40 of them up on the board doing circle and down, circle and down. And that's what she needed. And then she needed to go do it again the next day and the next day and the next day to really move that into long-term memory, because she's one of those 200 repetition kids. But a really straightforward strategy for print is standing and doing gross motor. And that helps to build that movement in the brain of how that letter is formed. Writing with a pen or a pencil, it doesn't matter. When it's small, fine motor, doesn't help. It's very frustrating for the child and leads to a lot of anxiety and upset. So we do rainbow letters on the chalkboard, and other people in here may have strategies too, but those are two really simple strategies for young children and then also for older children.
So Kristin, you said standing, and when you were talking about the large motor skills and making these large letters, they use sidewalk chalk and just be out on their driveway and the sidewalk and have the same effect? Okay.
Yeah, and I had a child who did it on the side of the house. Her dad wasn't very happy about that, but her mom was. Yeah. So the standing and the gross motor often will cross the midline. So that addresses some of the OT issues that the kids are having too. And it's enjoyable, which means, especially for a young child, it's enjoyable, which means that they'll repeat it. And getting kids to repeat it enough in order to move it into long-term memory is the trick. How do we get them to repeat it in a joyful, playful state and not in a state is really the key to achieving success, because they might need to do that Monday, and then they might need to do it Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. And maybe they didn't do it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they come back on Monday and they still need to repeat it again. So if it's something they enjoy doing, people will do shaving cream on a shower wall too, or in a bathtub. And I know there's some health issues around shaving cream, people have told me, but I'm old school. So the shaving cream, anything that allows them a salt tray, they can do it in a salt tray too, where they move the whole arm and make the shape. And that's a place where people can use their creativity.
So, Kristin, I appreciate what you said, and I heard you say, the OT is involved in that. The occupational therapist absolutely gets involved. And so, if you know they have dysgraphia, I'm going to assume you've already been working with an occupational therapist. But I will say what we see a lot of times is students who maybe had a need, and a particular need, say K through 2, the need changes when they get 3 through 5, and then it changes again. So I would say just make sure you're checking back in with the occupational therapist for what may be a change in need around what strategies will work for that student, as well as what Kristin shared.
I mean, ideally, we'd be able to fully remediate it K2, right? But often we don't notice because they're young. And so then it's not really addressed till they're older, which is actually takes longer. And then they're not as keen when they're in 4th grade to stand at chalkboard for chalk.
Right, exactly. And then what I would say is that's when we get into assistive technology. So now sometimes when you get to that 4th, 5th grade where they're expected to produce more independently in an academic setting, now we're looking at what technology, low tech, meaning a pencil with weights or some sort of accommodation to a pencil or a pen or whatever, all the way to high tech where you're looking at maybe a Bookshare, or you're looking at a not Bookshare, I'm sorry, text, speech to text, or some other avenue for getting their thoughts written down, because it's a processing disorder. And so there's some neurological components there as well, but sometimes you can remediate or, overcome some of the needs, and they may also then just evolve. So that's why I always go back to your professional, the occupational therapist, who typically will be involved in that determination, and continue to check in if the needs seem to change.
And typing, I would just add teaching keyboarding as soon as they're able to get their fingers to do it is a wonderful way to help them get thoughts down. But that's a process in itself.
And we have another question that's come in for you. Do you have suggestions for older students, such as junior high and older, who are still struggling with decoding and fluency? They are so resistant to going back to the basics of sound, symbol, connection, and phonemic awareness.
Yes, I can speak to that. We at Beyond Basics have worked with junior high and older, even adult learners. And one of the strategies that we implement to keep those older learners engaged from the onset is working with nonsense words. So, it's a difference in trying to, encourage a 11th grader to read cat, hat, rat. But when you have a nonsense word and it's multi-syllable, you can turn it into a learning activity because you're still using the strategies that you would use with those K6, K5 students, the younger students. You're implementing the same strategies, but in higher level content. And so they don't feel like it's a demeaning task, because when they look at it, they don't know what it is. They don't know what the word is, but you're teaching them the decoding strategies and helping them to apply those same strategies that they're using on nonsense words. They're able to apply them to real words when they encounter them.
It's in my son's IEP that he can use voice to text supporting for writing, since he still cannot form letters legibly in grade 3. He has a lot to say, but pencil and paper aren't the best way for him.
One of the other strategies that I used to use with my dyslexic, dysgraphic child, and that I used in the classroom quite a lot too, is to be a scribe. So at home or in situations where the child can communicate the story to the parent or to the educator, whoever happens to be there, with that child, that they say it and the other person is writing what it is that they're saying, so that they can see the process of what that looks like and how long it takes, right, to take a thought and then move your pencil across the page to write. So that's another strategy. If somebody doesn't have access to voice to text, you can always just have the kid say whatever they want to say to you. And then you write it down and you record their story for them.
I want to just take a minute and thank each and every one of you for joining us today and for this rich conversation and providing our participants with just so much information that they can go back and use. So thank you so much for being here. And if you just have any closing thoughts that you like to share quickly, that's great. And yeah, thank you again. 313 Reads is just really pleased that you have supported us in this and that you've been a part of this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we're asking if you would please, as a viewer, go to our tinyurl.com or tinyurl.com 313 Dyslexia feedback. And if you could provide some feedback for us today, that would be fantastic. And again, we've provided some information as to how you can get in touch with some of our discussants today. And if you go to our resource page at 313reads.org, you will shortly be able to find some of the information up on the website. And thank you again for tuning in and for being a part of this. So thank you very much.